Salutations, every pup. It's good to be back on the air. I know it's been a while since I've treated you to a PODFIC of style, so I'm sorry about that. Today we'll be reading Chapter 17 of Ignore the Dementor by NinjaPandaScholar. As always, the fic will be in the description below. And with that out of the way, let's jump on in. Chapter 17. An investigation begins. Harry was concerned. Auror Scrimgeour, or rather, High Inquisitor Scrimgeour, looked terrifying. He looked sterner than McGonagall, just as paranoid as Moody, and as capable as Kingsley. At least he wasn't wearing pink. He did, however, say quite plainly in his opening statement at breakfast the next morning that he thought the Inquisitorial Squad was a wonderful institution, that most of the educational degrees seemed reasonable, and that he would be interviewing anyone and everyone who may have interacted with Dolores Umbridge during the last day she was seen. Harry really hoped he wouldn't end up having to eat this High Inquisitor as well. With his luck, it would be Padfoot's fault anyway. The students watched the wall covered in educational decrees as Scrimgeour had a few removed. A few as in actually 3. Quidditch was still out to everyone's dismay. "We're taking bets on if he'll be better or worse than the Toad," one of the Weasley twins whispered to Harry as they watched the slight changes being made to the wall. "You want in?" the other twin asked from Harry's other side. "I'll put 5 knots on me getting detention by the end of his first week," Harry remarked wryly as Hermione turned and rolled her eyes at him from where she was standing just to the front of the group. "We can't give you good odds on that one, mate. Everyone thinks he'll be getting detention by the end of the week." A twin, Harry thought was Fred, responded with a smirk. "Fine, I'm out then." Harry shook his head, and Ron sniggered from beside Hermione. "I think betting should be the next decree," a voice dryly remarked from behind the group, causing everyone to spin around in surprise. Harry was face to face with the grizzled countenance of the new High Inquisitor that looked remarkably like a stern lion who wanted to eat him. Hello, Headmaster, sir," Hermione mumbled from behind Harry. Scrimgeour completely ignored her as he pinned Harry with a look. "Mr. Potter, I believe I would like to start my interviews tomorrow after lunch with you. I see from the school records that you had detention with my predecessor on the night of her disappearance." "She never showed, sir," Harry quickly explained as his heart began to race. "Regardless, you will be in my office by 12:30 p.m. tomorrow. Understood?" The man raised a commanding eyebrow and crossed his arms. "Yes, sir," the teen quickly replied, with a tense nod of his head. His stomach sank as the man walked away from their group. "Nice knowing you, kid," the twin, probably George, clapped him on the shoulder as they walked off, laughing. "You need to get your story straight and not break down like you did with us," Hermione hissed worriedly in his ear as they walked away from the rest of the students. "You think Snape will back you up? You said he was the one to patch you up after," Ron asked in concern, while they made their way to another day of care of magical creatures, and Harry avoiding all the creatures to the best of his ability. "It'd suck if he just sold you out to Scrimgeour." "He owes me," was all Harry said in response. He quickly pulled them into an alcove and cast the standard HSMC privacy ward. "What was that spell? Where did you learn it?" Hermione gasped in interest as she examined the strong word. "Hermione, focus." Harry physically turned her around to face him and away from the ward. "I need to tell you both something." "Do not tell me what happened that night," Ron said quickly with a scared look in his eye. "You know I'm terrible at keeping secrets, and I'm already keeping you being a Dementor a secret. I don't think I can handle another." "Oh, please, you already know what happened." Harry rolled his eyes at his friend. "Knowing and knowing are 2 completely different things," the redhead protested with a glare. "Well, you're going to have to deal with one more secret because Padfoot has decided to drop by tonight and has every intention of staying," Harry told them both, with a worried look in his eyes. "What?" Hermione exclaimed. "That's idiotic and dangerous! What in Merlin's name is he thinking? Blame Neville, not me. Harry pouted at her. He was the one who told Sirius I'd been crucioed. What? They both exclaimed. That's what happened? Hermione gasped in horror. That illegal... She was torturing him with a blood quill, Hermione. Ron glared at her. Of course, whatever she did was illegal. Yeah, that amongst other things. Anyway, Neville crashed my call with Sirius and got him all worried. Harry sighed. By the way, Neville knows about Sirius/Padfoot now, too. You should have remembered to put up a ward like this around your bed. Hermione reprimanded him as she motioned to the ward. Harry closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose, reminding himself not to lash out at his friends and rein in his temper. He pulled out a lip balm and applied it, as that always calmed him down some. Hey, can I borrow? Hermione asked as she reached out a hand. Harry looked at her questioningly for a bit. Isn't that a little weird? I just put this on my lips. It's not like Dementors catch germs, she reminded him. Jamie might, he protested right back. Fine, be stingy with your lip balm then, she huffed. The Dementors keep stealing them, and you only gave me so much. Harry glared. Children, Ron called out in frustration. The world must be ending when I'm the reasonable one in a conversation. Hermione, that actually is a bit gross. And Harry, stop being weird. Fine. What time does Sirius get in, and where is he going to stay? You know dogs aren't technically allowed. Hermione sighed, seeming to agree that if Ron was the reasonable one, something was very wrong. He gets in at 8 p.m., but I think Neville and I have worked out how to sneak him in and where to keep him, Harry explained with a smirk. Snape already has a house guest. We figured he wouldn't mind another. Both of his friends stared at him in disbelief. He's going to kill Sirius, Ron remarked. Yeah, that's not going to work. Snape definitely didn't want the first house guest, Hermione added on slowly. Harry shrugged. Well, we discussed that, and we think we may have found a way to make him at least listen, especially if the request doesn't come from me or Sirius. He doesn't like Neville any better, mate, Ron reminded him. Harry knew that wasn't exactly true. They definitely weren't friends, but Harry thought Neville might be 1 or 2 steps up in Snape's opinion than he was. Now, we have a plan. Don't worry, guys. Besides, Dumbledore will make him see reason if we can't. We just have to get Sirius through the door. And, you know Dumbledore. He'll handle it from there. That's like saying we just have to make sure Voldemort dies and calling that a plan. Hermione shook her head. You really need to work on your plans. Probably, but we're going to be late for Care of Magical Creatures now, Harry reminded them as he cancelled the ward. I'm hiding behind Neville today. Creatures actually seem to like him. Maybe it'll cancel out their hate for me. I can't wait to see what new creature Hagrid has that wants to kill you. Ron grinned unapologetically as he put an arm around Harry's shoulders. It's like being in a Harry suit cancels all their innate fear of Dementors and just makes them murderous. Everything is right in the world, and I'm the sane one again, Hermione sighed with joy as she followed along behind them. Harry and Neville awkwardly stood out on the castle grounds at 8 p.m. by the Whomping Willow. Harry had a small scratch on his arm from where the Krupp bit him during Care of Magical Creatures class, but Neville had thankfully talked the magical dog down, so that was his only injury. Malfoy and the rest of the Slytherins thought it was all very hilarious, while Hagrid apologized profusely. Curfew wasn't for another hour, but they still felt like they were breaking some kind of rule, even before they snuck in a wanted felon. The tree suddenly stopped moving, and with a happy bark, a large Grim ran up from the roots and tackled Harry to the ground. Snuffles! Really, that's so gross! Harry protested as a pink tongue licked him from his neck to his hair. Aw, but he missed you! At least one dog is happy to see you today. Neville laughed before he was tackled next with a yelp of surprise. Ew, I don't even know you! Serve thee right. You made friends with him when he tried to keep you away. Harry huffed as he peeled himself off the ground and brushed off the dust. Merlin, he's heavy, Neville commented from where he was trying to shove the large, happy dog off of him. Snuffles, let your new friend up, Harry chuckled as Sirius gave him a doggy smile and finally let the elf get back to his feet. Follow us and stay close, or I'll conjure you a collar and leash, Harry warned the unpredictable man. We're meeting someone who can help us get you into the castle. Padfoot looked a little confused since he knew all the secret passages, but he still followed along behind his godson and his new friend as they made their way to a secluded area by the Forbidden Forest. Scrimgeour kept Umbridge's squad of snitches to patrol the hallways, so the secret passages into the castle aren't guaranteed to not lead directly into a path of a patrol. Even with the map, the dungeons are too far away to transit, Harry explained to the dog, who trotted along behind the teens. Plus, Harry's already under a lot of suspicion, having been the last person to supposedly see Umbridge, Neville added. The dog just nodded as they stood in silence, with Harry scratching behind Padfoot's ear and Neville leaning against a tree. He's going to hate this, Harry snorted in amusement as they stood there, waiting. Who, Snape or Draco? Neville smiled at him. Padfoot looked even more confused at that comment. Snape mainly. I'm aiming for Draco never learning exactly what's going on, Harry explained, while he absent-mindedly continued to scratch behind Padfoot's ears. This had better be good, Potter. I don't know what you've dragged Neville into, but... The voice drawled as the Slytherin it matched came into view before pausing in surprise at the large black dog. He's not a Grim, he's just a dog. Harry rolled his eyes at the flash of fear that had crossed Malfoy's face. And Neville got himself into this mess. I snooped when I shouldn't have. Neville nodded sagely, before he left the tree and hugged Draco from behind and awkwardly walked him closer to the dog, while still holding on to him. Stop manhandling me, Neville! Draco protested, but made no move to shove him off. I just spent the last hour with Professor Sinistra listening to her relationship oaths about her ex, and then how obsessed she is with Vila. I feel like I've lost a good decade of my life to boredom at this point. Whichever of you sees him first, tell Matthew he's in the clear and that he owes me one. Maybe even two. That woman is drama. Seriously, she doesn't understand the meaning of too much information. Padfoot was bumping Harry's leg with his head at this point, as if he was asking what was going on. He kept looking between Neville and Draco and Harry with confusion in his eyes. Harry shrugged at the dog. He didn't know what was going on either. Hey, Draco, are you still on the Inquisitorial Squad? Harry asked instead. The blonde grimaced and crossed his arms over where Neville was still wrapped around him. Yes, Scrimgeour is just as intense, if less evil than Umbridge. Father hates him with a passion, so I thought I could get out of it, but he says it's a good political move, so I'm stuck. I desperately hope he doesn't find that creature-hating toad, though. Don't we all? Neville remarked from where his chin was now resting on Draco's shoulder. So, what's up with the dog, and why was I summoned here right before curfew? Draco drawled, looking as imposing as he could with an elf hanging off his shoulders. We were hoping you would deliver Snuffles here to Professor Snape's quarters, Harry began, while Draco looked skeptically at the scruffy mutt. You can say you found him on patrol for the Inquisitorial Squad and that he was trying to get into the dungeons. We just need to get him into Snape's quarters, and he can handle himself from there. It was Sirius's turn to look skeptically at Harry. Then, as he didn't seem very sure he could handle himself from there, Harry leaned in to whisper in his ears, Dumbledore is staying in Snape's quarters. You just have to convince him. The dog nodded in a very human-like manner, causing Draco to raise a questioning eyebrow. You are correct that I know where my godfather's quarters are, but why should I help you get a dog in there? I don't see this working out well for me at all. How about I'd owe you one? Neville asked seriously. Draco shook his head with a devious look. No, Potter owes me one, and I'll do it. Harry shuffled his feet awkwardly. He really didn't want to owe the Slytherin anything. Nothing illegal, he clarified. Potter, Of the two of us, you've done exponentially more illegal things since we've met than I have. Draco smirked at him. Need I remind you about whatever happened our first year? Harry's eyes widened as the realization sunk in that he was directly responsible for 3 professors either dying or being permanently disabled. Quirrell died. Lockhart was really his own fault, but would still never leave St. Mungo's, and Umbridge. He wasn't going to take any responsibility for what happened to Fake Moody. Melon, you're right. Why the hell are you right about that? He doesn't have a murderous psychopath trying to kill him, Neville reminded him kindly, as Padfoot nudged his hand with his head. Harry just shook his head. It definitely didn't cause him any guilt this time, as he was finally realizing it was all in self-defense and letting go of what he viewed as his responsibility, but still. Fine, Malfoy, but let's keep it reasonably moral, anyway. That I think I can do. Draco looked very smug at his win. You just need me to take the dog to Uncle Sev and let him deal with it, right? He needs to actually get through the door into Severus's chambers, Neville explained. Draco thought for a moment. Harder, but not impossible. A limb snapped in the forest somewhere, and they all jumped apart. Neville was across the clearing from Draco, who was sneering at them both like he hated their guts. They stood there for a minute before all relaxing. Sirius had never looked more confused in his life. I think we're safe, Harry finally concluded. I need to head out before anyone sees me with you ingrates, Draco sighed and turned to go before looking back at the dog. He have a leash or anything? No, he'll follow. Harry turned to Sirius. Snuffles, follow Draco and get into the chambers as quickly as possible. You know what to do from there. Play nice with Severus and stay out of trouble, okay? Sirius glared at him, but followed the Slytherin with a suspicious look in his eyes, like he was ready to push the teen into a mud puddle at the slightest provocation. This is going to end badly, isn't it? Neville chuckled as the two disappeared from sight. Maybe the fallout will distract Scrimgeour from my interview tomorrow, Harry sighed, as they slowly began to make their way back up to the castle. At least the club meets tomorrow night. You can tell us how it all went. The elf smiled encouragingly at his friend. If I'm not immediately arrested, the Dementor sighed. I got a message from the other Dementors that they set up a room for me at the new prison whenever I'd like to move in. It's not really Plan A, though. Harry laughed. Just tell as much truth as you can and stick to your lies as confidently as possible, Neville suggested. Unfortunately, all HSMC members are pretty good at lying, so welcome to the club. The club where we eat crickets, play Cluedo, and learn to lie better, Harry laughed. And don't forget Fall-Vila relationship drama, Neville grinned widely. Harry stopped mid-stride and turned to Neville. Okay, I have to ask. It's killing me. Malfoy, do you like him romantically? Are you friends? What's going on there? Seriously, I'm fine with whatever. My curiosity is just killing me to know, though. Neville sighed and tugged on Harry's arm to continue walking. We're friends. Liking him is irrelevant. High elves can pick their own mates. Malfoy's species cannot. Their mates are chosen by magic, and they're one of the few that will absolutely not date anyone besides their mate. So we're friends. That's all it is or will be. I thought he dated Parkinson last year, Harry asked, confused and a little saddened. No, they're just friends. Neville shrugged, a little sadly too. I guess I'm sorry then. I'm not sure if that's the right sentiment, though, Harry awkwardly offered. No, it's fine. I'm happy. I like my pret of a friend. Neville wistfully smiled as they got to the entrance hall. Now, change subjects. When are you going to ask Luna out for Valentine's Day? You know it's just in a few weeks. Harry groaned. Let me just get through tomorrow, and maybe next week. Then I'll think about Valentine's. Neville shrugged and shook his head, but let the subject drop. Harry stood outside of the portrait with the evil-looking witch uncertainly the next morning before breakfast. Aconite? He finally, tentatively, told her. As soon as the portrait swung open, Harry's collar was grabbed and he was forcefully pulled inside. You have to get me out of here. I'll sleep under your bed in Gryffindor. Hell, I'll sleep under that blonde pret's bed that brought me here. I can't take it, the both of them, though. Sirius pleaded with Harry, his eyes frantic. What happened? Harry asked Dumbledore. He was leisurely sipping a cup of tea and eating a biscuit at the little kitchen table. Snape was scowling in the corner, half hidden by an open potions journal. Potter, if it wouldn't give this whole situation away, I'd dock 1,000 points from you and assign detention until the day you graduate for forcing that mutt on my quarters. I warned you that I'd skin you alive if you told anyone where my chambers are. Snape growled at him menacingly, but in all seriousness. Harry smirked at the man unrepentantly. But Professor, I didn't tell him anything. Your godson was the one that brought him here. Snape sneered in distaste at the very Slytherin move. I wager Longbottom had something to do with that as well. I only hope Draco got something good out of the deal, or we're going to have a long talk about what it means to be Slytherin. He just asked for a favor from me at some point in the future, Harry said, as he sat on the black leather couch by the fireplace. That's not a bad deal, then, Dumbledore nodded in approval. I'm confused as to Mr. Longbottom's part in this all, but Mr. Malfoy could do worse than a favor from the boy who lived, especially with his family. Now it was Harry's turn to sneer at the name he hated. I hope you are all getting along. Sirius was just worried about me and decided to stop by. With Scrimgeour taking over and the Inquisitorial Squad, I didn't know where else to take him. Dumbledore sings. Really sings in his sleep, Sirius protested vehemently as he sat beside the teen. And Snape has already hexed me about 20 times. I just got my hair back the right color, and I definitely have a rash in a place we do not want to talk about. I see you can teach an old dog new tricks. Snape smirked at Sirius's avoidance of his favorite insult. Well, sing along with one and stop insulting the other, Harry shrugged unconcernedly. It was your idea to come here. You leave an entire house so you can move around into come to my small quarters. That is some wonderful reasoning skills there, Black, Snape remarked sarcastically. Oh, please, I'm not staying in your quarters, Sirius snorted. Besides, the people in this room, only Harry's friends know my dog form. I'm making sure my godson is safe, unlike everyone else at the school. And Minerva knows about your form, Dumbledore reminded him over the rim of his teacup. She does know you're innocent, though, fortunately. You can't just wander around the school, the vampire rolled his eyes. Dogs aren't allowed. For students, but I'm your pet now. You were the blonde kid, Sirius smirked at him. Plus, I want to see Luna again. I miss that fairy. She was fun. Hey, Padfoot, when did you tell Remus you ran off to? Harry asked as a thought struck him. Sirius just shrugged. I left a note telling him I'd be here, but he wasn't home when I left. Albus. Snape turned frantically to Dumbledore, who was already standing. Don't worry, I'll flew Grimmauld. I will not allow that wolf to stay here as well. I only have one guest room, Snape grumbled. I slept on the floor. I take up no room at all, Sirius protested. Well, I'm off to breakfast. I can't have Jamie going hungry. Harry stood and made his way to the other door. Hey, Padfoot, I'll talk to you after lunch. I have my interview with the new headmaster at 12:30. Sirius's eyes widened in fear. You going to be okay? He asked as Dumbledore finally left the room to use the Floo in Severus's potions lab. So that's why you came. Snape nodded, as if everything made sense now. Sirius mouthed, he knows, to Harry, who just nodded. Don't worry, Black. If I know Harry's accomplices at all, no one will ever find the woman, Snape assured him. But the portraits would have seen something. Sirius shook his head and added, causing Harry to blanch at the thought, as the thought struck him as well. Severus just shook his head. His accomplices are house elves. Ah, good job, kid. Sirius nodded, turning to Harry as if everything were okay now. Huh? Harry asked. They basically run the castle. They have more power than anyone over what goes on in the building, Harry's godfather explained. If you have them on your side, no one will cross them. I know this is probably too much for your tiny amount of impulse control to handle, but just stick to the lie and keep your head down and you'll be fine. Snape sneered and opened his potions journal again. I imagine you are in a lot of trouble, my boy, Dumbledore chuckled as he came back from his chat with Remus. Sirius groaned dejectedly as Harry hurried out of the portrait hole and towards the breakfast. Have a seat, Mr. Potter. A High Inquisitor Scrimgeour motioned to the armchair across from him where he was sitting behind the headmaster's desk. Yes, sir. Harry, hesitantly, walked further into the office for his interview and sat down. I'm sorry, sir. I really don't know anything. We'll see about that. Scrimgeour pulled a piece of parchment and a quill over towards him. What did you have detention for the night of Umbridge's disappearance? Dress code violation. Professor Umbridge said my necklace was out of dress code, Harry explained, happy he had remembered to tuck the locket into his shirt. Scrimgeour frowned, seeming a little confused that he had been given detention instead of points being taken, which was the customary penalty for that infraction. You said the headmaster never showed for your detention? How long did you stand outside of this office waiting? Harry cocked his head. Not this office, sir. Her old DADA office, he corrected the man. I waited for about 20 minutes. I would have left after 15, but I was worried that she might just be running late. Scrimgeour scribbled across his parchment. Why her old office and not this one? Less witnesses, Harry thought, but didn't voice it. I don't know, sir. Maybe it was closer to where she had planned to be at the time? She was still teaching DADA, you know. I do. I plan to pick up most of her classes myself. The Auror nodded. Did you hear anything or notice anything out of the ordinary? No, sir. Harry shook his head. Only that she wasn't there. All right, Mr. Potter. This may be unrelated, but would you have any idea where the soulless bodies of Antonin Dolohov and Rabastan Lestrange would be found just this morning at the entrance to the Ministry of Magic? The Auror asked, with a searching look at the Dementor in front of him. Harry was actually surprised at this. It seemed that Drake and Ronnie were having some success already. No, sir. That's terrifying. It sounds like Dementors, though. Weren't they two of the maximum security prisoners broken out of Azkaban? Indeed, he nodded, still looking speculatively at Harry. Finally, Scrimgeour noted a few more things down, and then nodded. All right, Mr. Potter. I think we're done for now. Harry sighed in relief and stood. I will, however, be talking with you again after my next few interviews. Harry turned and started towards the exit in a daze. He stopped and narrowed his gaze at the portrait of Phineas Nigellus Black, who was smirking so broadly that in anyone else it would be called a smile. After a glare at the portrait, Harry scurried out of the office, still in a state of panic that he was going to be called back after the interviews. He almost had to run the entire way down to the dungeons to not be late for potions class. Ah, Mr. Potter, 10 points from Gryffindor for deciding to finally grace us with your presence. Snape drawled with an extra irritated hint in his voice. Harry looked up questioningly, since he wasn't actually late. Instead of complaining, he just smirked and sat down at the table, though. Padfoot was sitting happily right by Snape's desk and watching everything going on. Obviously, that's what had the vampire in such a foul temper. He hasn't even acknowledged that Snuffles is there, Ron snickered in Harry's ear. Harry winced, knowing that with his vampire hearing, Snape could literally hear everything that was said in the classroom. The professor glared over at their table, and Harry was certain their potion would be getting a T for the day. As it turned out, having Sirius in class wasn't the worst situation, surprisingly. He followed along behind Snape on his heels, causing the most irritation possible, of course. Also, he picked up a few ingredients from the cupboard that Neville had forgotten and caught a flying shrivelpod in mid-air that had been aimed towards Harry's cauldron from the Slytherin side of the room. Miraculously, Sirius seemed to have processed that Malfoy was on some level liked, or at least tolerated, by Harry and Neville, and even saved his cauldron from the extra dragon thing that Seamus tried to put in it by growling at the Gryffindor threateningly. All in all, both Gryffindor and Slytherin students seemed to warm up to the huge, scruffy dog, and Snape looked slightly less murderous than he had at the beginning of class. As it was a long double period, everyone left for dinner right after class. Sirius left his self-imposed duty of annoying Snape to trot along behind the Gryffindors to the Great Hall. Harry and Neville paused, causing a pile-up behind them when they saw Matthew speaking with Professor Sinistra in a corner of the entrance hall. "It looks like it's going well," Neville hissed in Harry's ear. "They're both smiling. Probably a good sign," Harry whispered back, before they began walking again. "Hey, do you think that Hufflepuff might have a thing for the astronomy professor?" Ron asked the two of them, as he also glanced at the pair chatting. "Of course not, Ron. That's against school rules," Hermione reminded him disapprovingly. "But, Hermione, love is in the air. Valentine's is coming up. It's the next Hogsmeade weekend." Ron smirked at her scandalized look. "Yeah, Harry hasn't asked Luna yet," Neville reminded them all, which Sirius added a bark of agreement to. "Why do I have to be the one to ask?" Harry sighed. "What if she says no?" "Harry, this is Luna we're talking about." The High Elf gave Harry a very Malfoy-like imperious glare. "Hey, Harry," a dreamy voice interrupted their discussion as the Ravenclaw they were just talking about entered the great hall behind them. "Luna, hey, how are you?" Harry stumbled out as his face turned bright red. Luna seemed to be studying Harry's outfit, which admittedly was a little strange. He was wearing his winter coat inside the castle, as well as his scarf and gloves. "You need a new coat. That one has too many wax bits attached to it. You are just starting to get rid of the old ones around yourself. A new coat would help," she finally concluded from her observations. "Huh? Okay," Harry responded in confusion as he looked down at Dudley's old coat from 2 years before. It was still warm, even if it had some stains and some warm patches. "We'll get you one in the Hogsmeade trip. I know just the store," she informed him before walking off towards the Ravenclaw table. Harry stared after her with his mouth agape. "Did Luna just ask me to Hogsmeade for Valentine's Day?" Harry asked the group around him. "Is that what just happened? She did imply we're going together, right?" "No clue, mate." Ron shook his head. "I'd take flowers just in case," Neville sagely advised with a chuckle. "Ow!" A piece of balled-up parchment hit the back of Harry's head suddenly, taking him by surprise. "Where did that come from?" Hermione looked around. He didn't see, but he caught a glimpse of Malfoy walking away and decidedly not looking at their group. He slowly opened the parchment, hoping it wasn't cursed. "Don't forget chocolates, too," was scribbled in elegant handwriting with no explanation. Harry passed it to Neville, who smirked and nodded at the note. Everyone made their way over to the table for dinner. "So, how did the interview go?" Hermione asked in a whisper. "The first interview," Harry corrected. "He's going to talk with me again. But get this." He leaned over so that only Ron and Hermione could hear him. "Drake and Ronnie got Dolohov and Sebastian already." "Wow, they make good time," Ron whistled. "I wish they had gotten the other Lestranges already." "Are you talking about the escaped convicts?" Neville leaned over to ask, an anxious look on his face. "Have you heard anything about Bellatrix Lestrange?" The three glanced at each other, and Sirius put his furry head in Neville's lap. "Okay, Nev, I think it's time to catch you up on my friends Ronnie and Drake," Harry started with a sigh. And that's all, pups. I hope that you enjoyed, and please go show the original author some love, and please leave me a comment. I love reading your comments. They make me so happy. please leave me a hate comment. That being said, shout out to Iyuki Zukami 5434. Thank you for your hate comment. I appreciate you all so much. I actually really enjoyed this chapter. It was such a fun chapter. I really like them sneaking Sirius into the castle and like having to get Draco in on it, but Draco doesn't know what's going on. I like Draco at the end there too. He's like he's really becoming more friend now than enemy, and that's great. We love good Draco. We love Draco redemption in this house. Anyway, I hope you guys all enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye, pups.